Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut and another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs, Divisional champs, NFC champs, and world champs.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Victory Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles finished off the 2022-2023 season as David Akers said, the NFC East champs. We'll see if we can continue on with what he said on that draft day in Dallas back in 2018. The Eagles are the number one seed after a very boring 22-16 victory over the New York Giants on Sunday afternoon. I'm your host, LG Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donnell. Connor, what's going on, man?
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't pretty. There was a lot of overreaction by fans, I think. Lucky for you, you got to see it in person. The fact that you get to see it.
I don't know if it was lucky. I don't know if I was lucky.
Yeah, well, I would say lucky because, trust me, seeing it on television, not being there in person, was a hell of a lot more boring than at least being at the link and maybe the atmosphere, maybe if only for the first quarter. And after that, you could even tell the atmosphere was dead, even on TV. But, I mean, we got the bye, and trust me, based on the way they preserved Jalen Hurts and then the comments post-game, we needed this bye. It was absolutely essential. Hurts gets this extra weekend change to get closer to 100%. But we said it in the last episode, an 80% or less Jalen Hurts is way better than 100% Gardner Minshew, and it was ugly, but it worked.
It was ugly. And look, the atmosphere at the stadium when Jalen got announced last, it was hype. Everybody was excited. Because everybody knows what he means to the team. The amount of MVP chants and everything, he deserved all of that, and it was exciting to see him back out onto the field. Then the game started, and you can tell, I get wanting to get your quarterback into just get him in a rhythm, let him throw and all this, but your first 10 plays were passes. That was very frustrating to watch, and you can tell that it wasn't the same offense that we saw the first, when did he get hurt? Week 15. So
yeah, 15.
The first 14, 15 weeks of the season, you can tell that it wasn't the same offense. They for the first time in his career, they didn't call any design runs for Jalen Hurts. His runs were him just getting out of the pocket and avoiding getting hit, or trying to avoid getting hit.
And even when he ran, he was sliding. We never see Hurts slide. And he was we do see him slide, but he was sliding premature. How you'd usually see him try and get an extra couple yards out of something. He was going down and quick.
So the one thing I will say, though, is we thought that Minshew would be able to get one of the two previous games against Dallas, against the Saints, be able to get a win, and we wouldn't have needed to force Hurts into the game. But I'm kind of happy because he was rusty. Imagine him going 5 weeks without playing a game. And then that next game is going to be either against Dallas, against Tampa, against the Giants, or against Seattle. Who knows what would happen if he hadn't played. So he was able to get rid of the rust. His arm looked fine. There was no issues with that, but it still wasn't the Eagles. It was very conservative, very vanilla. And I kind of think that the coaching staff, and I don't know if the players, but the coaching staff came into this thinking the Giants are playing their second and third string. We can show up and we can win. And the Giants, and what did I say last week? These guys that are going to come out there and play are going to try to prove to Brian Dable, Wink Martindale, and whatnot, that they deserve playoff minutes. They deserve playoff playing time. So you can't go out there and think, if we show up, we're going to win. And that's almost what happened. Yeah, it was 19-0, but I don't ever want to see a game where Jake Elliott kicks 5 field goals. Those field goals, it wasn't the Eagles' red zone offense, obviously, when they got down there. We saw the uncharacteristic interception thrown by Hurts. I think it was the first drive of the third quarter after another ineligible man downfield penalty against the Eagles after he found Devontae Smith in the back of the end zone. But if the one thing that I am worried about going into the playoffs is the coaching staff. I'm hoping we did not peak too soon. And I'm hoping we aren't seeing a regression from the coaching staff. And now that Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon are going to be interviewing places, will that impact what they put in during the week going into a playoff game? Because they haven't been in this position before. You know, the Eagles didn't have a bye last year, so Jonathan Gannon wasn't getting interviewed on the week leading up to Tampa Bay. They lose to Tampa Bay, then he goes and gets interviewed. Now you have 2 weeks between games, and Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon are the hot names for the Eagles that have 3 or 4 interviews or have been requested to be interviewed 3 or 4 times already by 3 or 4 different teams. That's a worry for me because we're all, while the Eagles defense numbers wise was good, but when you watch them, it didn't feel like it a lot of the time. So I don't know what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks, but the coaching staff has to figure it out. They need to, look in the mirror and they need to come out and get back to that, the first 10, 12 weeks of the season when this was the best team in football. They're not the best team in football right now. They might not even be the best team in the NFC right now. San Francisco right now is playing the best football in the NFC. Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, they're all playing really good football over in the AFC, but we need the Eagles to get back to playing the brand of football they played the first 10, 12, 13, 14 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there is a little bit of overreaction to this game. And to the offense that we saw under Gardner Minshew was not the offense that would ever be run with Jalen Hurts. And then the Jalen Hurts offense that we saw for week 18 is definitely not the Jalen Hurts offense we saw weeks 1 through 13 or 14, like you said. So obviously I know there was a lot of people, and I even sent it in some group chats where there was a ton of people sitting there saying, we're going to be out right after the bye. We're going to lose. We look terrible. But it was 100% the game plan to look this way. But like you said, they thought that they could walk into New York or walk into the link against New York and that they'd just be able to really easily take them down because they were playing the backups. This was a team that me and you have been calling fraudulent for most of the season. But clearly, maybe they're a step ahead. Maybe they got some pieces in place. Who knows at this point? But we thought, this is kind of a fraudulent team. They're limping into the playoffs. They're going to put in their backups. Of course, we're going to pound them into the ground, and I think me and you both predicted really high scoring for us and not for New York, and it definitely didn't turn out that way whatsoever. And exactly like you said, they came out to play, and watching the national broadcast, the amount of times they said this defense came to play, this defense is really showing the Giants coaching staff what they got and are playing with their heart. It made me nauseated to hear how much they said that and how much they were pinpointing that even though it was a conservative offense, we should have still been able to do more than what we did. But we have seen with the Gardner Minshew offense and then with this conservative offense this past week, if you cannot use Jalen Hurts' feet, it takes out a massive element of your game, which impacts other elements of your game. And we saw it. As soon as Jalen Hurts is not as mobile, they can have less people in the box. They can just have a spy on Jalen Hurts because they know he's not going to necessarily run like he would. You don't have to worry about him as much. He's going to slide. It just takes so much out of the game. And again, it was kind of frustrating to see how they used the Russian offense. Again, Jalen Hurts did run 9 times for 13 yards, 9 times probably too many. And then we saw Miles Sanders go 11 for 33. Boston Scott had his usual touchdown anytime game against the New York Giants, 9 for 54. And then Gainwell was 5 for 35. It was still kind of frustrating to see that we threw the ball 35 times and we rushed the ball 34 times, 9 of which was too many for Jalen Hurts.
Do you think there's something up with Miles, or do you think that this was more of we're going to protect him? He's run the ball a lot this year, the most he's run in his career, so let's save him for the playoffs? Because it was weird down the stretch with it being Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell and not Miles Sanders out there.
I do think there's a preservation standard there because of what we've seen in the past. Like you said, this is the most he's ever run at the NFL level. And he has a history of injuries. Yes, he's been very healthy this season. He's had almost a clean bill of health. So we shouldn't really have to worry about it, but it's still in the back of our minds that every single season, except for this season, he's missed at least 1 or 2 weeks or has been on injury reports for multiple weeks. Definitely has to be in the back of the mind. I think it was a more of a preservation thing. But if they come out in whoever we play in the divisional round and Miles Sanders rushes 10 or 11 times, I'm going to be really frustrated because at the end of the day, it seems like everything is signaling towards he's going to be gone. He's going to overvalue himself and Philly's going to be happy to let him walk. And it would just make no sense not to run him 15 to 20 times, make him the lead back. You don't really need Boston Scott. You don't really need Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell can be out there periodically, change of pace, pass, catch him back. But really, you should be running Miles Sanders into the ground. He's been one of the most effective. Well, we have a fair amount of effective targets, but he's been a very effective offensive weapon. Him, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and of course, Jalen Hurts. Those 5 have been extremely effective, and you should use all of them to their maximum ability, not 10 to 12 carries. His maximum output has always come when you gave him like close to 20 carries. And he was most effective that way as well because it gave him a higher chance of getting those runs, where he ends up with 20 yards here, 15 yards here, and then a couple where they're abysmal efforts. But at the end of the day, he got the touchdowns, he got the 100 and some yard games. And that's what we want to see from Miles Sanders, especially in the playoffs. We need that running game going again. Both Sanders and Jalen Hurts. This past week, and then the 3 weeks prior to that were really frustrating to watch from an offensive standpoint, play calling wise. Most importantly, play calling wise from a Russian perspective.
Oh, it definitely has been. And again, that's where my issue going into the playoffs is with the coaching staff, with the game plans. And while they obviously didn't want to go out showing something to the Giants who they could potentially see in 2 weeks, because if the Giants beat Minnesota, which could happen because Minnesota is also a fraud, you have the fraud bowl there.
It's my upset special. If I'm picking an upset, Tampa's an upset, I think, but not really. I really see more as the Giants are an upset. So
yeah, so neither team really wanted to show much, but you could tell. I mean, like the fact that Davis Webb was leading Cager down the field and Marcus Johnson down the field against Gannon, starting defense in the
Gary
third and
Brightwell.
fourth quarter. Yeah, in the third and fourth quarter was very like when it was 19-3 and whatnot. Like it was, there's no reason for the Giants to come out there and score 13 points to make it a game, and that had me worried. You have your starters out there, so like I don't know if they were playing not to get hurt. If you were playing not to get hurt, take them out the game. It was good to see defensively though. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson played every snap. You thought that they would maybe ease them in. No. He played every snap. It was good to see. He brings something. He brings a swag to that secondary. I know we have Slay, and Slay has swag, but Chauncey Gardner-Johnson brings a different type of swag. And if you saw the video from the locker room after him when he got his hat, he gave a big hug to Howie Roseman. I don't think Howie's going to let him leave. He's a 24, 25-year-old safety they traded draft capital for. They're going to find a way to keep him here. And I mean, I don't blame him. Just what he does for that secondary, for this defense. He was able to play the slot, which allowed Blankenship to stay back at safety and keep Josiah Scott off the field. Like, he is so versatile and he brings so much to this. The fact that he still is tied for the league lead in interceptions after missing the last 5 games is incredible. Just shows what type of talent he is. And I just don't see Howie and the Eagles letting him leave. And if they do, which, I mean, obviously is possible because you got to give Jalen Hurts a big contract. More than half the starters are from the defense are free agents, but he's one that I'm prioritizing bringing back.
100%. It's been something that we've talked about, and I had it on. I did, well, it wasn't really a poll. It was, I took the spot track market valuations of all the players who were impending free agents, and I put it up there, and the majority of the responses were bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for sure. It was like priority number 1. And you could tell from weeks past when he was out, this defense looked different. This defense struggled, and especially we cannot be out of Avonte Maddox and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That is more than proven now that one of them has to be there. But if we have to pick one that is absolutely going to be there for 17 games of a season plus a playoff run, it's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And I get it. He proved himself very versatile, and he proved himself very worthy of a safety contract, which is going to be a lot more than a nickel cornerback contract, which is the reason why he left New Orleans, because New Orleans wanted to pay him as a nickel corner. So one of the biggest reasons he left was that. So Howie's going to have to pony up and pay a decent amount of money. We know he was in the market for the safeties in the offseason, and those safeties like 14 million, 12 million. You're going to probably be having to put out 14 million this year for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And it sucks, but I think he is one of the most important. Like, you look at some of the pieces. If Brandon Graham wants to come back, he has to be willing to come back super team friendly. Fletcher Cox, super team friendly. Jason Kelce, super team friendly. At this point, you don't want to ever see those guys in another jersey, but you have to do what's right for your team. And what has been proven most vital to this team has been guys who we have seen go out injured at points in the season, like Josh Sweat, like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And those are the guys who mean the most to us. When you know and you feel their impact when they're gone, we didn't feel the impact with Fletcher Cox. Yes, we did kind of with Brandon Graham, but I think with a healthy rotation, if they draft the right defensive end or get a couple defensive ends in the mold, I think you can kind of get past Brandon Graham. I say that with a very big grain of salt because I love Brandon Graham and I would love him to come back. But I feel like if you get another healthy rotation in, you can live without Brandon Graham, but you can't without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Like, he is someone we have felt he's also when he is missing
10 years younger.
And he's way younger, like at this point. But this is like, we're at a point now where Howie has to look at the roster, and there's a lot of guys that he has brought back. There's a lot of dead money in Fletcher Cox. There's a lot of dead money in Jason Kelce already. There's a lot of dead money in these guys, whether they retire or whether they re-sign and we kick more money down the road. These guys are still getting paid as Eagles next season, and they're not even going to be on roster. So the issue for me is, at what point do we have to just say, okay, I'm not kicking any more money down the road. You have to take a minimum deal. I'll throw a bunch of incentives in for you, but it's a team-friendly minimum deal, or else, sorry. Because we have done this too often with some of these veteran players, and we saw it in the 2017 team. And then after that, the players got old, even a year older, and we looked so bad in 2018. Like, things just started to go downhill. And we don't want to do that by bringing back a bunch of guys, having no salary cap, and being in a situation where we're looking at an older average age team again. Although we do have a lot of good young pieces in place.
You have to think that Howie is going to learn from that mistake back in after the 2017 season when they won the Super Bowl. And it was more of a nostalgic thing. Like, look, we have to bring all these guys back. We just won our first Super Bowl. They need to be here. I think that if the Eagles were to go on to win the Super Bowl, that he's going to look, Kelce, we love you. Maybe Kelce will retire too. You retire as a two-time champ, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Like, he's the best center in football easily right now, and he's been the best center in football for a long time. He has a chance to go to the Hall of Fame. Brandon Graham could, even though it started out rocky for him, and out of position as a line out, in the 3-4 and getting booed because a lot of people, including myself included, wanted Earl Thomas. So maybe if the Eagles win the championship, you have these three guys that can just go out on top as three-time champs. And
I get it. Like, Brandon Graham career high, but then at the same time, like, career high sack count, like pretty much essentially a career season based on the amount of time he played. But at the end of the day, how much of that has to be owed to the fact that, look at that defensive line that you're playing with? Obviously,
he's also coming back off of an Achilles, though,
which is impressive too. Yeah,
it's so impressive. Like, if he should be up there for comeback player of the year,
100%.
Will he win it? Probably not. Maybe Geno. I don't know. Somebody will win it. But he's 34, 35, tore his Achilles late last year, worked his ass off this offseason, and has a career high in sacks on a team that finished third in NFL history in sacks with 70.
And don't get me wrong, like, I'm impressed by it, but like, you cannot, like, if you're Brandon Graham, you have to come back saying, all right, I want to offer something to this team, but I know I got to take a lot less money. Like, you have to come back with that mindset, some of these guys, because otherwise we already know that Howie has to make a massive decision with Jalen Hurts. And at the end of the day, if he wins one playoff, what he's done has earned him the contract already. If he wins one playoff game, if he wins 2 playoff games, if we end up in the Super Bowl, this goes from a 40 to 45 million discussion to a 50 million discussion to even maybe 55 to 60 million dollar discussion like that. And you have to fully take account to that.
That will also depend on how he plays, because it could be, I mean, Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl and he shouldn't have won the MVP. His defense should have won it. Or Eli Manning won an MVP when Strahan. Like it definitely does matter. Like, because the Eagles could win the next their two playoff games leading to the Super Bowl, but it'd be defensive nail biters. You won't see a 38-7 where Nick Foles went insane against Minnesota back in 2017, 2018.
No, and what's worse is Minshew didn't help the case. If Minshew comes in and he does what Chris Sims said anybody could have done, then you kind of have some leverage over Jalen Hurts. Look, we can probably roll somebody else into this if you want $55 million. How about we be realistic here? But Gardner Minshew kind of hurt that.
You're not going to afford to lose a 24-year-old, 25-year-old MVP candidate, like at the quarterback, at the most important position in all of sports. So, like, it's a double-edged sword. Because you're right, like if Minshew would have performed well, Howie could have went in there and say that, but also Hurts could have been like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to get paid by somebody.
Just like the Lamar Jackson situation. If Baltimore doesn't want to pony up, he's going somewhere and somebody's going to pay him. Like, the talent that is there.
They're going to give him the franchise tag because they signed Roquan Smith. So Roquan Smith and Lamar Jackson were there.
That was a massive deal. Holy man.
$20 million a year. But yeah, so like Roquan Smith and Lamar Jackson were the 2 franchise tag candidates for Baltimore. Now they can give it to. You don't want to give it to them, but the Deshaun Watson contract definitely complicates things for Baltimore in there.
I think it complicates things for a lot of quarterback negotiations going forward. I think some are more realistic, but I mean. And I mean, with Watson, I think next year is going to probably be a lot better when he gets a full off season with his team. Everything's kind of in the rearview mirror. I wouldn't say it's in the rearview mirror, but I mean, some people will say that. So, I mean, it's going to be a difficult off season for Howie, and I get it. There's a lot of people when I talk about contracts. Oh, the salary cap doesn't exist. Oh, the salary cap's going up X amount of money. Who cares? Don't worry about it. It's there. Despite it not feeling like it's not there, it's still there, and Howie still has to make decisions. And when you look at the dead money, we pay out we paid out the most dead money this year. I think next year we're top 5 in paying out dead money. That's how Howie does it. While you may not think the salary cap doesn't exist, it's there in the way that whatever the salary cap goes up, we pretty much are paying it in the dead money at the end of the day. That's pretty much what we're doing. So we're not gaining anything. The cap is pretty much whatever. If we have 20 mil next year, we have 20 mil next year. And if it goes up by $15 million, well, guess what? I think we're paying like $25-30 million in dead money again. So.
Yeah, I'm still of the belief.
I know you are. How about like, but
salary cap is a fallacy. Also, before we continue, if you are tuning in with us live, let us know your thoughts on who you would want to bring back from the free agents. I know, like, we have 2 weeks. Like, we don't know who the Eagles' next opponent is. We know there's going to be one of 4 teams, and we'll get into our predictions in a little bit. But we obviously want Gardner Johnson back. Who else would you want back? Thoughts on Jalen Hurts' performance, the coaching staff, and whatnot. And if it came down to Steichen and Gannon getting hired away from the Eagles, which one would you rather stay here?
I mean, I think that's probably like an overwhelming majority that would scream for Steichen over Jonathan Gannon. I think that was a pretty clear one. But what about defensively? I mean, let's go back to the Giants game briefly. Defensively, PFF gave us 8 missed tackles. It felt like a hell of a lot more than 8 missed tackles. That is one of the things I'm most concerned about. I'm not as concerned about Gannon. I find he's actually adjusted fairly quickly the past couple weeks. It's usually like that first drive or two, that first quarter that we're sitting there and we're like, oh my God. And then things kind of fall into place a little bit better. But we missed a lot of our tackling was abysmal against the New York Giants. And that's something I'm super concerned about because it was something that reared its ugly head earlier in the season. We got a little bit better at it. And now it's kind of rearing its ugly head again in the later part of the season. But I mean, besides Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being back and being a massive gain for us, to get back before the playoffs. What else did you think defensively?
I wasn't impressed. Again, like Slay has really not played well
he's regressed like the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's regressed a lot.
Well, and maybe that coincides into Gardner-Johnson being out. So we'll see. Like he let Kenny Golladay beat him for a touchdown. Kenny Golladay.
It was an amazing catch. Like, I'm not going to discount. That was insane. And there could have probably been pass interference called too, but
I mean, that was going away from me. So from where I was sitting, so I didn't get a great view at it. But they also like apparently got a couple of sacks. It felt like they got no pressure on Davis Webb against the backup offensive line. Again, that was worrisome. Backup receivers, backup running back, and especially in this third and fourth quarter, they were able to move the ball up and down the field on the Eagles. Like that was very worrisome. Again, I know that numbers wise, the Eagles finished first in sacks, second overall in defense. Like it looks better than I think, or it looks good, and it's better than the way I'm portraying it. But
it's the last few weeks, the regression of the last few weeks of the coaching staff, and whether it have been injuries or the coaching staff, I don't know. But the regression offensively and defensively, and I get no Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I get no Jalen Hurts. Those were two humongous pieces to lose. But the play calling and stuff like, and then Darius Slay's play, there's certain things that you can pinpoint that are scary heading into the playoffs that you really don't want to be seeing. And like, it's funny that you talked about the pressure because PFF actually said we got pressure on him 31 times, and I'm shocked. That's probably one of the highest. Davis Webb probably was the most comfortable quarterback under pressure I've ever seen then, because it felt like we were not in his face that often. It felt like you said, we weren't getting that much pressure. Maybe the pocket was collapsing. He was getting throws away just as it was collapsing. So that accounted as a pressure, but it didn't feel that way. And he looked good. When he ran over Reed Blankenship, that was embarrassing. And I pointed it out. Epps and Blankenship are only good with a running head start. They're not true tacklers. They're guys that can be kind of run over. They're heat-seeking missiles. You have to get a running head start, and the angle has to be just right, and they'll give a highlight reel hit. But they can also be on the receiving end of highlight reel stiff arms or completely being bulldozed over by a second string quarterback.
Yeah. It was worrisome. Like, and you think about it, and we've talked about it time and time again, how Gannon gets, I don't want to say scared, but it feels like he coaches scared against good quarterbacks. Well, you could be potentially going up against Tom Brady in the first round. It's potentially going up against Dak Prescott, who I still don't think he's any good, but he's better than Davis Webb. So like that's
you could go up against Daniel Jones. Like at the end of the day, I don't care if Dak had his worst season or if Daniel Jones isn't who we all think he is and he shouldn't earn a contract or be a starting quarterback. I hate divisional games in the playoffs. I don't want either of those matchups in the playoffs.
Well, Dallas is losing to Tampa just because they're Dallas and they've never beaten Tom Brady.
You sit there and you sit there. This is a team that struggles in the playoffs, and you're going up against Tom Brady, and you're going to sit there and say, "This is our year." Color me like more skeptical than I usually am on the Cowboys, but
yeah, we'll see what happens. But oh man, like I don't, and I had mentioned it on like Facebook. I think I did on Twitter. Like I don't feel good about the team going into the playoffs now. Maybe after this week, after the wild card, round, maybe I'll start to feel better. By the time we're back on here next Friday, maybe I'll feel better. But going after the game on Sunday and the way we played the last month, I don't feel good. But then I think back to 2017. I didn't feel good going into those playoffs with Nick Foles. So, and this team is probably better than that team. Especially, I mean, like if you look at the offense, Hurts is better than Foles. Sanders, I guess, is better than Ajayi and Blount.
Sanders can pretty much do what both of them could do by himself.
The receivers are by far better than that receiver.
Leaps and I would say the O-line's equal because most of it's the same. Some of it's the same. So
Goddard and Ertz probably on par, but like this offense is better than that offense. Defensively, like we had Darby and Mills as the corner, and obviously in the Super Bowl they gave up a record in yards to Tom Brady, but I mean, I would take Jenkins and McLeod probably over the
Epps and Blankenship. I guess we have to call it Epps and Blankenship right now until Maddox is
this
back.
This linebacker core is better than that linebacker core.
I mean, Nigel Bradham was having some of his best years with us, but and Kaiser White showed up this past week, but like he's been kind of hit and miss. And TJ Edwards has a lot of tackles, and he's had a really good season, but he's hit or miss. So,
and then if you think about the defensive line, I mean, they had a lot of depth on that, but there's also a lot of depth on this one too. Like,
and a lot of the same players again.
Yeah.
Like,
so I do think this team is better than that team, but obviously that doesn't mean that they're going to just go through the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl. But
no,
we'll see. We'll see how I feel when we're back here. You know, in a week and a half, talking about previewing the divisional matchup against whoever we're going to play. But let's get into our predictions. Now, we both predicted Green Bay to make the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. That's not happening, obviously, because they lost to the Detroit Lions. And in the AFC, I don't remember. Did I have Kansas City? I think I had Kansas City.
I think I had Kansas City too. I want to say Buffalo. We both. I think you had Buffalo, or I had Buffalo, and you had Kansas City. One or the vice versa. We each we were almost the same. We were Green Bay,
both had
and
Green
we
Bay.
had different on the. But
that's going to be interesting. What the NFL decided to do in the AFC. That if it's going to be Kansas City versus Buffalo in the AFC Championship game,
it's a neutral stadium.
Of course, the dumbest beat reporter that covers the Eagles, Elliot Shore-Park, says that the AFC Championship game should be played in a dome, even though both teams are outdoor stadium teams, because he's a moron.
And weather doesn't matter to them. They've played in some notorious weather and played really good games. I mean, I guess we only have to worry about that if the time comes, but it is a very realistic expectation that those two could be meeting. So
yeah. Yep. And if you think the Eagles have to face both of them next year, if the opponents are out, they get the Chiefs, because that's the ninth game is going to be against the team.
It's much harder than this
season.
Like, I already saw people like predicting like 12 wins. I'm like, hold the phone. This is like,
we don't even know.
Look at the strength of schedule we had at the start of this past season versus next season. It is night and day. I'm prepared to go back to my 10-win prediction of this past season and hold true to that next season, because you got a lot of teams that are in the playoffs this year. This past season, like, what do we played? Like 2 teams that were above 500 last year, like 3 teams that were above 500 last year. Like, it's a joke.
The Chiefs are first in the AFC. The Bills are second in the AFC. They have the Dolphins, who are a playoff team.
Jets, who were close.
The Jets stink, but if they get a quarterback, they should be better. Their defense is good, but the Eagles have never lost to the Jets ever. They get the Patriots. Get the Vikings.
San Fran, I think.
San Francisco. Like, it's going to be a tough schedule next year. And I mean, we don't want to look ahead, but trying to plan out some games next year already. It might potentially go into Eagles Dallas in Dallas next year. We'll see. We'll see when that is.
Before we predict, though, I think we should do an unheralded player, should we not, for week 18?
I mean,
I got one. I'll give you one. I got Elijah Mitchell for the San Francisco 49ers. And I get it. Like, he used to be a guy that, he was a starter last year, and he's a guy that maybe shouldn't be on this list, but this 49ers team, like you said, this 49ers team kind of scares me, because they have that really good defense, but they have the next man up mentality that the Philadelphia Eagles of 2017 had. Like, no matter what seems to step in their way, the next man up steps in, and they have so many offensive weapons, and their defense is elite. This defense is probably one of the best, I think, in NFL history. So that's why I picked Elijah Mitchell. I just had to get an unheralded player. I was ready for one.
I'm going Nyheim Hines. 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, and he started the game in that emotional game in Buffalo with a kickoff return for a touchdown after all the stuff that happened with Damar Hamlin. And it's good. He's back in Buffalo. He's in stable condition at a hospital.
Could be released from the hospital in the next 2 days.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go Nyheim Hines because I didn't, obviously being at the Eagles game, I didn't get a chance to watch Red Zone and see all that. But just imagine like taking the opening kickoff, taking it to the house, how like that stadium had to have been insane.
And especially considering like they traded for Nyheim Hines and he had done nothing. Yeah, up until literally that point, and he still did nothing except for the kickoff returns. But I mean, that's what you get in a really high-powered offense. You just wanted to shore up the running back position, and instead they actually shored up the kick return position because he's been a really good kick returner. In hindsight, maybe Philadelphia should have looked at that.
You would have thought too, with them having the connections with Indianapolis, with Sirianni and all that they would have tried to do that. But oh well. All right. Time to go to wild card predictions. We're going to start with the first game on Saturday afternoon and take it to the Monday nighter, which, of course, they got to shove the Dallas Cowturds down our throat. But first, let's start with, and I think this is an easy one, the Seattle Seahawks at the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's a 9.5-point favorite in that game. I'm going to go San Francisco. I don't think I really need to explain that. Who you got?
No, you don't have to explain. The only thing I need explained is that 9.5 seems light, but I guess it's a divisional game, so give them a little bit of love. I would have thought more like 13.5, to be honest. But yeah, no, San Francisco, easy.
Imagine if Seattle does pull off that upset, then we get Seattle.
The only thing is it's divisional. That's the thing. When it's divisional, man,
it's hard to beat the team 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the second game on Saturday is the Chargers at the Jaguars. Doug Peterson, man, that's a heck of a turn. Urban Meyer should just.
And all the post-game conversation is like, well, what was different? It's coaching, man. This guy's smart. This guy's got a great culture. This guy's incredible. We knew this guy was incredible, and shit just hit the fan at the wrong time. It sucks because I would have loved to have kept Doug EP around a little bit longer. But
and think about it, like the hire of Doug Peterson was exactly what Trevor Lawrence needed. He got 100%. He got the QB whisper. So who you taking, Chargers or Jaguars?
I'm going with the Chargers. I think the Chargers are the better team. This is no disrespect to the Jaguars. I think they're a good team. I just don't think they're fully there yet. Like, I just don't know if you're being the Chargers. But the Chargers are a team that has had notoriously bad luck with injuries and close games over the last, 3 to 5 years. It's been insane, the luck that they've had in both departments, bad luck that they've had in both departments. So it could easily go the Jags' way, but I think I'm going Chargers.
Jaguars beat the Chargers 38-10 earlier this year, something like that, crazy. I trust Doug Peterson over Brandon Staley, so I'm taking the Jaguars. I'm going to strictly on coaching. I'd rather Doug Peterson over Staley. Let's go to the Sunday matchups. There's 3 games. Another divisional matchup. The Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's a 9-point favorite. I'm taking the Bills. I just think they're the better team. I don't even know if Tua is going to be playing. If Tua was playing, I think it would be a lot closer. But Buffalo is on a mission, I think, to get back to facing, to facing the Chiefs if they can in the AFC Championship game. So I'm going to go Bills.
Yeah, I'd be the way the Dolphins have played the last 5 or 6 games has been horrible, and I get it. First of all, the first ever player to have 3 recorded because I know there's guys who've had more. 3 recorded concussions in a season. There's no chance I would ever let that man touch a field again this season. But for the NFL's sake, for the business sake, for the betterment of having a better game on the field, Tua's going to be out there and Tua's going to be playing, but I'm still giving it to the Buffalo Bills. I feel like he's going to. I feel like
it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. It's not going to be Tua.
He shouldn't. The guy admitted in post game, like in film recaps with his coach, he didn't remember making some of the decisions. That dude should not be on a football field for a very, very long time.
Yeah. All right. The middle game on Sunday, the New York Giants and the Minnesota Vikings. They played, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the Vikings won on a 61-yard field goal as time expired. So a rematch back in Minnesota. Who you got?
This was my game that I'm picking, like, the upset. This is my upset special. I'm going with the Giants. I think the Giants can do it. Like, the Minnesota Vikings defense is terrible. And, like, they asked a question to the linebacker there, what was it, Kendricks or something? And he literally commented, with no accountability whatsoever, he commented saying, well, the offense is scoring more points than the other defense, so why does it matter what we need to improve on and stuff? Zero accountability. The Vikings defense is just bad. And if pound for pound, I'm thinking, do I trust Kirk Cousins in this position, or do I trust literally almost any other quarterback? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to pick against Kirk Cousins. I just don't like, especially after that game earlier in the season. And I think the Giants are better. Like,
I don't trust Daniel Jones.
It's close. It's tough.
I don't trust Daniel Jones, so I'm going Minnesota, even though I don't trust Kirk Cousins either. If this was a night game, maybe it's a different story, but it's like right on the edge. It's a 4:30, like, so it's not really a night game.
But it would be, heading in towards prime time when Kirk Cousins might need to show up and do something big.
I don't know if the Giants are going to be able to stop Justin Jefferson. So I'm going to go Minnesota. The nightcapper, another divisional matchup. We have 3 divisional matchups, and we have wild card weekend. The Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson will be back against Joe Burrow, who says that the Bengals window isn't going to close as long as he's there. And the Cincinnati Bengals. Who you got?
I got the Bengals, man. Like, Lamar Jackson's going to be back, but he hasn't played in, what are we talking, like 6 weeks now? It's been quite a while that he's been out. The team as a whole has looked awful. Their games are so boring to watch. The games are awful with the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. But now you need Lamar Jackson to pick it up and do almost everything against this Cincinnati Bengals team. This Bengals offense is just too good. The Ravens defense and inconsistent play is just too much to worry about. I'm giving it to the Bengals.
I'm going to go Bengals too, which would also set up the Bills and the Bengals this time in Buffalo, in a game that wasn't able to finish up a couple weeks back with what happened to the Damar Hamlin. Yeah, I just think Baltimore is not playing well at all. And that defense, even if they have a lead, I don't trust that defense to stop Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow wants to get back to
T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And
their receiving corps is really good. Better than the Eagles have a good one, but they have 3 good. Again, why we keep trying to force the ball to Quez Watkins, I'll never understand. He's not good. So stop doing that. Give the Quez Watkins targets, give them to Dallas Goedert. But that's a different story for a different
We
day.
digress.
And the final game, the Monday Nighter, the Dallas Cowboys against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going Tampa with the upset as they are 3-point underdog, which would mean Tampa Bay. In my scenario, Tampa Bay's coming to Philly for divisional round, and you'd have the Giants coming to Philly for the divisional round. Who you got, Dallas or Tampa?
Yeah, I got Tampa here. At this point, I would rather be on the wrong side of a pick against the Cowboys if they finally decide to win a playoff game. But you guys show me you can actually win a playoff game.
They looked so bad last week.
They've looked okay, I get it. You beat the Philadelphia Eagles with Gardner Minshew barely. Like, Dak Prescott has been really bad. Kellen Moore as a play caller has been really bad.
Dak Prescott played 12 games and led the league in interceptions, had another pick 6 against Washington. Sam Howell beat this, and it was the starters for Dallas.
Sam Howell, Jarrett Pedersen, Terry McLaurin wasn't even out there the whole game. I don't think
there's issues there.
I just can't I said, I would rather be on the wrong side of this pick. If they get it, good for them. Congrats, you finally got a playoff win. But for me, until you prove you can actually win in the playoffs, and how long has it been since they won a playoff game? Like 20 years or something. Like, I'm going to be on the wrong side. I'm going to be on the other side of it for a while.
They won a playoff game in 2018, I think.
2018. Okay, they haven't gotten to the
They haven't gotten
conference
to the
grounds.
NFC. They haven't gotten to the NFC Championship game since '95.
Okay, the champion. Okay, well, you gotta show that you can win consistently in the playoffs for me. And
Dak
like you
is
said,
not a good quarterback.
McCarthy's a
Dak is
bad
not
coach. Prescott is proven potentially not that
They
good,
forced-
and
they
Kellen
forced the
Moore
ball to
is
Zeke.
proven really not good either.
They forced the ball to Zeke. Trayvon Diggs, you can beat on double moves all day. So yeah, they're definitely Dan Quinn is going to be a head coach somewhere else. He'll be probably in Denver or something like that. So
Crazy to think, but oh my goodness, don't make that mistake, Denver. But
we'll see.
it is Denver. It is Denver.
All right. So our plan is we're going to take the next about week and a half off. We'll be back Friday the
20th.
The 20th, maybe another early show. I like doing those early shows. I won't lie. If our schedules allow for it. And we'll get you ready for a divisional weekend between the Philadelphia Eagles and whoever they face. But the Eagles, the NFC runs through Philly as long as the Eagles are in the playoffs. And I do apologize. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the show. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. Follow the Painted Lines on Twitter and YouTube at the Painted Lines. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Edge of Philly Sports or EOP Sports. And wherever you're listening to us, if you're not listening, if you didn't tune into the live version, please rate and review the show. Give us 5 stars if you think we're doing a good job. And, while we are looking forward to off-season talk, mock draft, and all that, we are more looking forward to a possible Super Bowl run over the next couple of weeks as the Eagles are set to do battle with whoever at Lincoln Financial Field next weekend in the divisional round of the playoffs. Thank you all for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour. The Eagles are the number 1 seed. We'll be back next week to get you set for the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Have a good night. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut and another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.